and hostile to the United States. Earlier, Pyongyang said it had successfully tested a hydrogen bomb and one that can be fitted to an intercontinental ballistic missile. It said the test was a meaningful step towards completing the country's nuclear weapons program. It took place at a site in the northeast of the country.
We start with the North Korean nuclear crisis. Countries around the world are reacting to Pyongyang's latest and most powerful nuclear test. Here in Japan, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe condemned the move in a phone conversation with his American counterpart. In what's becoming a regular course of action, the two leaders spoke briefly following Sunday's test. The White House says Trump used the call to reaffirm Washington's commitment to self-defense and the protection of its allies. It says to do so, Trump would use the full range of diplomatic, conventional, and nuclear capabilities at his disposal. Abe told Trump the test was an intolerable, reckless act and an all-out challenge not only for Japan and the U.S., but for the entire international community.
I and President Trump agreed that we will not overlook North Korea's latest outrageous act. We also agreed that the international community must bring the greatest pressure ever on the North with strong determination.
The U.S. Defense Secretary has also commented, saying his country is not looking for the total annihilation of North Korea, but he did warn threats will be met with a massive military response.
We have many military options, and the President wanted to be briefed on each one of them. We made clear that we have the ability to defend ourselves and our allies, South Korea and Japan, from any attack, and our commitments among the allies are ironclad.
And we've just learned Prime Minister Abe has spoken with South Korea's president. They've apparently agreed to work together on a new resolution for UN Security Council sanctions.
Earlier, I spoke with Kim Tae-woo. He's a professor who focuses on North Korean issues at Konyang University in Seoul.
In my opinion, North Korea is doing what it has done because it has no reason to stop it. First, whenever North Korea commits such provocations, it deepens the US-China conflicts, prompting China and Russia to protect North Korea. Secondly, as shown in the recent verbal war over Guam, by conducting the so-called brinkmanship game vis-à-vis the US, the isolated country has elevated its negotiating status, pressed the U.S. public opinion, and successfully jolted the U.S. alliance policy. Thirdly, North Korea has scared South Korea with its weapons of mass destruction, psychologically dwarfing the South Korean people and the military, and acquiring concessions from the South, thus successfully distorting inter-Korean relations in its favor. These are the reasons why North Korea cannot quit its addiction to nuclear weapons. Technologically speaking, the repetition of nuclear tests helps North Korea advance their nuclear weapons and manage their weapons safely.
And this morning, North Korea's state-run media showed several photos of Kim Jong-un overseeing work on the country's nuclear weapons program. And what are the implications of this report and the sixth nuclear test?
According to the South Korea Meteorological Administration, North Korea's sixth nuclear test recorded an earthquake magnitude of 5.6. It is 11 times larger than the fourth nuclear test and 5 to 6 times bigger than the fifth one, both held in 2016. It also evaluated that the explosive yield of test was 50 kilotons, 3 times bigger than the Hiroshima bomb. On Sunday morning, Korea Central News Agency released photos of Kim Jong-un inspecting nuclear warheads. This served as a forecast of today's test. Experts said that the hydrogen bomb is tens or even several hundred times more powerful compared to the atomic bomb. Most nuclear weapon states developed their second-generation hydrogen bomb in about 5 years since their first-generation atomic bomb. For China, it took only 3 years. North Korea did its first nuclear test in 2006. So South Korean experts have long predicted that North Korea has been developing hydrogen bomb. Anyway, by doing this, North Korea is shouting toward the US, are you still refusing to recognize us as a nuclear weapon state? Now South Korean experts are turning their eyes toward China. China and Russia has continued double play. They have agreed to the UN sanctions, but have been conniving at the North Korean nuclear weapons and unofficially supporting the survival of the Pyongyang regime. This is why now South Korea is waiting upon China's next action. But before that, we predict the US will toughen their stance against North Korea and seek collaboration with Asian allies, Japan and South Korea, on how to step up pressure on Pyongyang.
Russian President Vladimir Putin once again inserting himself into other countries' geopolitical crises, saying that the United States and North Korea are, quote, on the verge of a large-scale conflict. Putin criticized the use of, quote, provocations, pressure, and bellicose rhetoric between the two nations, calling those tactics the road to nowhere. Here to discuss those comments, U.S. relationship with Pakistan, and a lot more, we're joined by former U.S. Ambassador to the UN and Fox News contributor John Bolton. Ambassador, there was a phrase from the old Cold War era called moral equivalency. A lot of the left-wing critics of the United States claimed there was this some kind of moral equivalency between what the Soviets were doing and what we were doing, when in fact there wasn't. It sounds like Putin's taken a page from that book.
Well, literally, you took the words out of my mouth. Really, this is also the Chinese script here, that it's a problem between North Korea and the United States, and neither one should engage in belligerent action. Look, we wouldn't be in the fix we're in today with respect to North Korea if it weren't for extensive Russian and Chinese assistance to North Korea, specifically in the field of ballistic missiles for Russia and nuclear from both of these countries. So I'm not terribly sympathetic to Putin's concern about what may come next. He and his countrymen are in large part responsible.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question. I think I know what your answer is going to be, but the question is, whose side is Putin on?
Yeah, well, I think he's on Russia's side more than anything else.
That's the answer that I thought you'd give, but go ahead.
He would like to see Japan, South Korea, and the United States weighed down by this continuing North Korean threat. But if he thought about it a little while, he would see that ultimately it should be in Russia's interest, I think as it is in China's interest, to eliminate this piece of baggage in North Korea, eliminate the threat to peace and security in Northeast Asia, allow the reunification of the peninsula, and stop this once and for all. He's playing a dangerous game. He's got a difficult position when he looks south and sees China with a lot of people and no mineral resources to speak of, and Russian Far East Asia with a lot of mineral resources and very few people.
Well, speaking of a strange game, there's a very strange game transpiring right now in the desert of eastern Syria, where a convoy of 17 buses of ISIS fighters, along with their families, we have to mention, is sort of stuck between various positions of the U.S. military, and the U.S. military is now actually giving them food and water so they don't die in the desert. What's going on there?
Well, it's a complete breakdown, I think, of our ability to pursue a strategic objective here. We're supposed to be trying to destroy ISIS. I would take these people prisoner, give them to the Kurds or the Iraqis or one of the other Arab states. I certainly don't think they're our responsibility. I think it's important people understand where this convoy came from. It was because Hezbollah, one of the world's leading terrorist organizations, and ISIS, which may be the leading terrorist organization, cut a deal so that these ISIS fighters and their families could go back to the caliphate and fight against us again. This is, look, we need a more strategic view of this whole conflict, and the notion that we're feeding ISIS fighters because they've used their families as human shields is just mind-boggling.
But it is true that that they are, and this is a tactic we've seen with terrorists ever since, for decades. They've been doing this since the PLO was in power in parts of Palestine. I mean, the bottom line is that they have no qualms at all about using women and children as human shields to protect themselves, and that's what's happening here. It's a tough dilemma. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, I'd put them in POW camps, or one alternative would be to send the women and children back to Hezbollah and put the ISIS fighters in prisoner camps.